our Attorney General in his suit to repeal Obamacare. I'll support the Freedom of Healthcare, the Healthcare Freedom Act, that will exempt every Texan from having to buy health insurance under Obamacare. We still have the 10th Amendment. And we're going to have to take that procedure. The 10th Amendment basically says the rights not specifically granted to the federal government are reserved to the states and the individual respectively. The last time I looked, the 10th Amendment is still in the Constitution. And we need to fight under that to repeal that. Unfortunately, my opponent doesn't think there's anything that he can do. In fact, he told your very newspaper, Robert, that there was nothing that he could do any more than you and I could. The only thing that he could do was call his congressman. Folks, I beg to differ. There's a lot that we can do, and we can stand up with our Attorney General and fight to repeal this egregious power grab. And I will support it.
First, if I may go back just a second, and I guess my opponent's memory is failing him, but in Clarksville, Texas, he openly endorsed the building of a lake, period. Let's do it right now. As far as the national health care system is concerned, yes, it's going to create a heavy burden in Texas. And me as a businessman, as the one true businessman standing on this podium that has about 350 employees in this state, I'm very concerned for what might happen and the kind of burden that could be put on me. And yes, I do support our Attorney General in his opposition to that and standing for Texas. I have voted every opportunity that has been presented to me as your state representative to uphold our state's rights. So to say that I don't stand and I don't support our district in the things that we believe in is just not the truth. And you know, we are required, and what the burden that will happen to us as a state legislature is that we are required to balance the budget. We can't print money like Washington does. We can't go borrow money from China like Washington does. And, you know, my opponent makes it sound like that this administration is the first administration that has done anything along this lines. You know, you can go back through President Obama, Bush, Clinton, and Father Bush. They've all overspent. They've all overregulated this country. And we've all been in opposition to those things. I have fought. Just as an example, just recently I was part of a group of members of Texas legislators that wrote a letter to the President that said on the air quality permitting issue that has been going on, that you need to leave us alone. You need to let us do our business. So, you know, again, I am very concerned as to the effect that it's going to have on our state when it comes to balancing our budget and how it's going to affect our small employers, our true employers in this state. And I've been there for them, and I'll continue to do that as well.
Thank you. You get to go first on the next question.
You gave some rebuttal over. May I rebut that?
Okay.
You know, Mark, you seem to enjoy picking on the fact that I'm a businessman. But I can tell you this much. When I was young, my father told me, he said, the sooner that you realize that the government doesn't owe you anything, the sooner you'll be successful. And so I went through my life expecting that I wasn't going to get anything from anybody. And everything that I ever received, I got from the sweat of my brow and my heart and my brain. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, Mark. I had to work for what I had. The business that I have now, whether you think it's appropriate or not, is a business I formed with my own two hands. It wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. But let me tell you, the thing about business that we need to understand, folks, it's not about how many employees that we have. It's about whether we have good business principles. I support a friendly business environment in Texas. I'm not going to vote for things like you did last year to make it easier to sue business, to raise taxes on business like the granting tax, to vote for more regulations by requiring employers to educate their employees about whether they earned an income tax credit. That is something between you and an accountant. I'm not going to vote to require employers to have to allow their employees to have cardiovascular screening and overweight screening. When did that become an employer's obligation? But my opponent is voting for everyone. So whether you have 300 or 100 employees makes no difference. The question is whether you're business friendly to this state. That may be the reason that the Texas Association of Business has endorsed me and they haven't endorsed you and given you a failing grade, Martin.
Amen.
You know, again, you have a little trouble with the truth or just half-truths. You talk about the health screening deal. That was something that was brought by the insurance industry to us and said, please, would you do this? And secondly, on the tort reform issue, he said, I voted to allow more suits in this state. I have a 90% voting record with Texans for Lawsuit Reform. And this last vote that they talked about is something that was not of any interest to them in the previous sessions, and they did this as a vote. They wanted to get rid of me, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But because the people that he stands with, he talks about that he is the defender of frivolous lawsuits in this state. And the problem, the thing is, that what he doesn't tell you is that when I was there, and I was part of the team that passed the constitutional amendment that you put into the Constitution that is now to create the tort reform in this state, the medical malpractice reform, that I was an integral part of getting passed. My opponent couldn't even make it to the poll in 2003 to cast that vote to support that. Couldn't even make it to the poll. But he's out there defending that, so I think what he means is that as long as he's making a dollar out of it, he's a defender of frivolous lawsuits. So, you know, I stand on my record. I have been there for 12 years. I've always stood for Northeast Texas. It hasn't always been popular, and it has created me have to, I guess you'd say, explain myself. But every vote that I've cast has been for you.
Okay, Mark, you're up. Next question. What will be the most important vote in the next legislative session?
The budget, without a doubt. It is the most important aspect. Well, that's what we go down to. We are sent to be your fiscal defenders of your money, and your budget is. We are required to balance the budget. There are so many pieces to the budget that it takes about half to three-quarters of the session to even go through the $180-some-odd billion budget that we have, and there are any number of things that your public education, your highway system, health and human services, and the whole 9 yards, your environmental regulatory system and our agency and the whole 9 yards. So passing an honest, balanced budget is one of the most important votes that I can do for you.
Thank you, Paul. Erwin?
Well, we have a couple of important votes. We've got redistricting coming up, which hopefully is the subject of one of your next questions. But I don't disagree with Mark. One of the most important votes we will have is on the budget. What I didn't hear tonight from my opponent is how he's going to balance the budget, because we have to do that under the Constitution, thank goodness. The question is, how do we do it? Many people, and Mark included, have thrown out the idea of raising your taxes. In fact, this last mailer, in fact the only mailer that we got from Mr. Homer over the last session suggested that very thing. I have signed a taxpayer protection pledge, pledging that I will not raise your taxes to balance this budget.
Amen.
I think that Texas needs to do what Texans have to do, and that is when things get tight, we tighten our belt.
Amen.
We cut spending. And that's what I intend to do. And I just feel compelled to comment on what Mr. Homer said about lawsuit reform. You know, this whole...
Erwin, before we go into that, what's going to be the notch on your belt that you're going to tighten?
Well, the first thing that we're going to do is require a concept called zero balance budgeting, which basically means you don't get to come back as an agency and just add 10% to whatever you spent last year and say, this is our budget. we're going to require that you start with zero. And then justify every single dollar that you want from appropriations. And if you can't justify it with some sort of a cost-benefit analysis, you don't get the dollar.
Well, what are you doing that's appropriate? Parks and Wildlife, Highway Patrol, what's going to be chopped?
I've not had the opportunity to completely go through appropriations, but one of the things that I do know is that we can trim fat. We can consolidate departments. We can require transparency and efficiency. Let me tell you, folks, you are the best auditor. If every agency in this state, including education, had their budgets online real-time with real-time expenditures, believe me, we would cut fat. Because you would find there's a way for that. And we would train it. You guys might want to take a look at there's a Dallas Morning News article that was published back in a couple of weeks ago. And they had, August 1st as a matter of fact, and they had some good ideas about where to cut the budget. And those are good starting places for actually cutting the budget as far as the actual budgets. But I pledged to do that. Unfortunately, my opponent, although says he wants to balance the budget, won't tell you he will do it without raising taxes. In fact, he's happy to spend government money on superfluous things. Like spending money to give grants to convenience stores to stock fruit and vegetables. Or providing voicemail to the homeless. Or voting to expand welfare beyond truly needy people. Or increasing property taxes by allowing cities to assess and impose energy-efficient improvements and to place liens on homeowners' lots if they do not comply. To me, that is not looking for ways to trim fat. That is just looking for ways to waste money and heap layer after layer of government bureaucracy on us, and I'm unwilling to do that. Amen. Am I up?
You're up with the next question unless Mark wants to rebut anything. Okay, let Mark rebut there a second on budget.
I assure you. Number one is I have, twice I have voted to lower your property tax since I've been your state representative, in 1999 and as well in 2005 special session. And I also voted against the Republican-backed margins tax. Those of you small businesses out there that are now paying the tax that has been placed on your gross receipts, there is no more overreaching and overstepping or government overreach than to get into your pocket before you even make a nickel. I was publicly opposed to that. I stood up against that on the House floor, and the Republicans pushed that through. As far as the appropriations process, already your agencies have to come and justify every dollar that comes to the appropriations process, and I'm glad none of my appropriations members are here because I think they'd be quite offended. They start early in the morning and go late into the night talking to the agencies for many months, or many weeks for sure, months on end, to scrub everyone's budget, where they've been asked to come forth right now with a minimum of a 10% reduction in every one of their budgets. And secondly, as far as compiling or combining agencies, we have sunset reviews, been going on for years, and we